If you've been in close contact with someone who tests positive for COVID-19, you could get a call from your local health department. To protect us all, answer the call. Learn more at michigan.gov/containcovid. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
It just doesn't feel like summer without an ice-cold Coca-Cola in your hand. Stop by your local convenience store today and grab a 20-ounce bottle of Coca-Cola or Coca-Cola Zero Sugar. Or pick up even more delicious refreshment with a 20-ounce bottle of Diet Coke, Sprite, or Fanta. So no matter how you soak in that summer sun, at home or on the go, grab an ice-cold Coca-Cola today and enjoy.
You want the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth about sports in the state of Michigan?
You can't handle the truth!
Well, we're giving you the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast, the show that provides research and statistics about all the Detroit and Michigan sports teams, whether fans like it or not, and detects, exposes, and reveals actual and hidden facts and truth that the mainstream media doesn't want you to know. No junk, no entertainment, no homerism, no slappiness, no coddling, no pop culture, no conspiracy theories, no opinions, no shilling, and no fluff. Head over to our website, themichigansportstruthpodcast.com. Follow us on Twitter, Periscope, and Instagram at Michigan_Truth, and like the show's 2 Facebook pages, one of them at Michigan Sports Truth, and the other created by Stables.network. Visit Stables.network's website, primetimewiththestablesnetwork.com, like Stables.network on Facebook, and follow Stables.network on Twitter, Periscope, and Instagram at Stables Network. The Michigan Sports Truth Podcast does not represent or defame any of the teams it covers, nor does it represent or compete against any mainstream media in the state of Michigan. It is also not for entertainment or debating purposes. It only detects, exposes, and reveals honest, actual, and hidden truth, facts, and statistics about them. And it is for every sports fan's own good because the truth is out there.
And welcome to another episode of the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on Stables.network. I'm Taylor Phillips along with Frank Vasner. Ed Smith will hopefully be on shortly or later in the show. Follow me on Twitter, Periscope, and Instagram at DT2Phillips. Follow Ed Smith on Twitter, Periscope, and Instagram at EdSmith313. And follow Frank Vasner on Twitter, Periscope, and Instagram at Frank_Vasner. Got lots to talk about here tonight, including headlines. The Michigan Sports Hall of Fame passed like 4 years ago. And then we got some Tigers to talk about. Nice win for the Tigers here tonight. They come back from behind 4-0 to beat the Kansas City Royals 5-4. Nico Goodrum, a sacrifice fly in the bottom of the 5th, and then Jonathan Scope, a 2-run home run to tie it at 4. Jonathan Scope actually hit a sacrifice fly to get the Tigers on the board in the 3rd inning after they were trailing 4-0. And then the other sacrifice fly by Nico Goodrum, and then Jonathan Scope struck again, this time with a 2-run home run to tie it at 4. That Goodrum sac fly made it 4-2. And then in the 7th inning, Jacoby Jones broke the tie and put the Tigers in the lead for the first and only time, 5-4, and that's how it would end up. Buck Farmer sent him up and down in the 8th, and then Joe Jimenez sent him up and down in the 9th for yet another save. Brian Garcia gets a win. Matt Boyd, 4 earned runs in 5 innings pitched. Just the same Matthew Boyd, but he got bailed out by the offense and settled for the no decision. So, Frank, if you want to talk about that real fast, go right ahead.
Well, I think what I can say so far about the Tigers through almost 1 week of the season is, for one, their hitting through basically 7 games is day and night compared to last year. I mean, I think including tonight, they have now hit 11 home runs on the season, and I believe to this point last year they only had 1 or 2. So you at least see the hitting is there. The fielding going into tonight, I believe I told you and Ed in our chat beforehand, 75% of balls that were hit in play off of their pitching was turned into outs. So that was 3rd best in the MLB going into tonight. So you can see that their fielding has gotten significantly better. Granted, there's still been a couple errors here and there, but you know what? That's going to happen once in a while. Well, I don't think that's anything to hit the panic button over. Pitching, aside from Matthew Boyd getting shelled in his 2 starts and an absolute disastrous outing by Bo Burrows and Kyle Funkhauser on Monday night, bullpen's actually been pretty solid. So I think you can see, hey, the team is looking better. I wouldn't say that they're going to be a contender in the division, even though the American League Central is crap. So we'll see where it goes, but I think they're definitely looking a lot better than last year. I know it's a small sample size, it's only a 60-game season, but who knows? Let's see where this goes come end of August into September. They might be that team that's kind of like a cockroach where they just hang around and might be in the hunt at the end. Who knows?
Yeah, they started their season in Cincinnati with a 7-1 loss, but they won the other 2. 6-4 and 3-2, and then they come back home for a home opener, which they got smashed 14-6. They blew a 5-1 lead and just fell flat. It was 10-5, and then it was 12-5 KC, and then it was 12-6, and then it was 14-6. Just the pitching, including Michael Fulmer, was all garbage except for the first 2 innings when Michael Fulmer only gave up 1 run. But after that, the Tigers. They buckled down on their pitching. They won 4-3. Ronnie Garcia started only 3 innings, gave up 2 earned runs. Jonathan Scope, a 2-run home run. Christian Stewart, a 2-run home run. Jonathan Scope, by the way, last night and tonight, combined 5 RBIs. A 2-run home run last night, and then a sacrifice fly, and then another 2-run home run to tie the game at 4. That's at least 5 RBIs. Jonathan Scope seems to be swinging a hot bat, Frank.
You're absolutely right, Taylor. And I was discussing this with a couple of friends of mine during the game, is saying that I think Tigers have gotten a really nice return on investment on Scope. Now, this could be an interesting situation to watch. Let's say if they're in contention at the trade deadline, and I think they obviously wouldn't move because that would be silly. But let's say if things kind of go off the rails and they are kind of out of it, I think they could, at the trade deadline, and I think they obviously wouldn't move because that would be silly. But let's say if things kind of go off the rails and they are kind of out of it, I think they could possibly get a nice return because he'd be a good rental piece to add to a contending team. Or do you possibly consider, if you're Al Avila, signing him to an extension and possibly getting a bigger deal? I mean, Scope has been kind of that journeyman second baseman. He's always produced quality at bats, but who knows where it's going to lead with him. But I think he's definitely been the Tigers' MVP through a week of the season. We'll see if that continues.
Yep, the Tigers, let me look at the schedule right here, looking at the MLB.com at-bat mobile app. They got one more against the Kansas City Royals tomorrow night at 7:10, and then they got the Cincinnati Reds again, this time at Comerica Park, 7:10, 6:10, and 1:10 Friday through Sunday. Tomorrow you got Ivan Nova with a 5.40 ERA, still no decision yet. It's going against Singer. Then Spencer Turnbull against Trevor Bauer. That should be an interesting starting pitching matchup. And then on Saturday, let's see here, Michael Fulmer, a 13.50 ERA against Miley. Wade Miley right now is 0-1 with a 27 flat ERA, just 1 2/3 innings pitched. Ugh. Now on paper, going into that matchup, it should be a slugfest right now. And then at 1:10 on Sunday, the Tigers don't have a starting pitcher projected yet, but Tyler Mahle is projected to start on the rubber against for the Cincinnati Reds. He's 0-0 with a 4.50 ERA, 4 innings pitched, 4 strikeouts, and a 175 whip. So that is the Reds-Tigers series at Comerica Park. And then the Tigers have a 2-game home-and-home set, 2 games each. The first 2 are at Comerica Park against the St. Louis Cardinals next Monday and Tuesday, and then next Wednesday and Thursday, both at 8:15. They're at the St. Louis Cardinals at the new Busch Stadium before they have their only regular season series with the Pittsburgh Pirates next weekend from the 7th through the 9th. 7:05, 4:05, and then 1:35. And then we'll look at the rest of the schedule week by week as the season progresses. So, Frank, what do you think of that upcoming schedule?
Well, with more games against the Reds coming up, I think those are definitely winnable. But, we'll just kind of have to see where it goes from here. I mean, look, I know it's a short season, and plus we have to remember you can't win a division in week 1, but you obviously can lose it. So let's just hope. I think we can hope that they keep their momentum going and stay near the front, but only time will tell.
True. So that's Tigers for you. They claimed a first-round pick pitcher Carson Fulmer from the Chicago White Sox, probably off waivers or something like that. Yeah, that's the only Tigers headline that I have to get off my chest. And then elsewhere in the state of Michigan, we got the Pistons. They have bought the Phoenix Suns G League franchise, the Northern Arizona Suns, and plan to move it to Detroit for the 2021 to 2022 season. The rebranded team will play in an arena that's currently under construction on the campus of Wayne State University. Their other G League franchise, the Grand Rapids Drive, will continue the 2020 to 2021 season, while the Northern Arizona Suns continue through then, meantime. Earlier in July, the Northern Arizona Suns announced that they would leave Prescott Valley, Arizona, and moving to Phoenix. But I guess that's not the case. So surprising news about the Pistons buying that Northern Arizona Suns G League franchise, Frank.
Yeah, it is kind of surprising because I knew that they were affiliated with the Grand Rapids Drive, but I believe they also shared that with another NBA franchise. So it'll be good that the Pistons will have their own G League team to themselves, and especially one that's going to be in the city of Detroit. So in the event that they have to call somebody up due to an injury or send somebody down for something, they only have a short drive.
I just got word that Ed Smith will be joining us shortly, so hopefully he gets in successfully. So, great news by the Pistons. And then to the coronavirus headlines, Michigan State Spartans Football is isolating in self-quarantine for 14 days. They've been doing that now after a staff member has tested positive. And now, recently, 16 athletes and 4 staff members have tested positive as well. That's 16 athletes and 4 staff members total. That's 16 players on the football team. The Michigan Wolverines have paused their summer voluntary workouts for field hockey, ice hockey, swimming, diving, and volleyball, but football is not affected. So that's good news. The Lions have installed plexiglass dividers into their locker room as part of their new safety precautions against COVID-19. And I believe the rest of the NFL teams should do the same thing. Also, defensive tackle John Atkins opts out of the 2020 season, and wide receiver Kenny Golladay and tight end T.J. Hawkinson are on the reserve COVID-19 list. And speaking of the NFL and NFLPA had agreed to a revised CBA. The player representatives have approved a deal by a unanimous 29-3 vote. Training camps will start July 28th. That's yesterday, so they started yesterday. The players have the opt-out ability, considering bigger camp rosters. Face shields not mandatory, but encouraged by the league to be worn by the players. 12 NFL rookies have COVID-19 after the initial round of testing. All quarterbacks in the NFL, including Matthew Stafford, are likely to be quarantined in isolation to avoid the COVID-19 spread. And there will be restrictions on off-the-field activities and no plans for a bubble. Those are NFL headlines. In terms of the coronavirus, back to MLB. MLB and MLBPA, the Players Association, have approved a plan for a 16-team postseason for 2020. The Marlins, Orioles, and Yankees, Phillies have been postponed, but MLB is not canceling the season. And I heard another Marlins game has been postponed. 18 Marlins players and staff members that tested positive for COVID-19. And finally, the MLB has been mulling 7-inning doubleheaders, according to The Athletic, just recently tonight. Those are MLB headlines. On the positive side, in the NHL, 0 positive tests out of 4,265 tests from last week after Phase 3 was concluded. And then in the NBA, Commissioner Adam Silver says he feels optimistic that the league is on the right track with its bubble. And he's got a point there, because to prove it, again, 0 of 344 players test positive since July 20th. So there you go. Frank, I want to let you give our audience your thoughts about the NHL and the NBA having 0 positive tests. So go ahead.
Well, I was kind of hoping to do that a little bit later on tonight, but I'll go ahead and say it right now. I have to really tip my cap to Adam Silver and to Gary Bettman for getting this right with the whole bubble, by creating a hub city or hub cities in the NHL's case, so that everyone can be in one place, limit their travel, not have to worry about going anywhere, and put restrictions in place. And for the most part, everyone has followed them, with the exception of a couple NBA players who went out to get food. But even still, despite those, like Rashawn Holmes and Lou Williams trying to go out and find food, nobody ended up testing positive. So round of applause to both of them to both Bettman and to Silver for keeping it right and getting it right. And now we don't have to worry about anyone hopefully catching COVID in the near future. And we can get on with the NBA postseason and NHL postseason, which, by the way, exhibition play has resumed. So we can say it's good to have hockey and basketball back.
Yes, absolutely. Except the Red Wings and Pistons are not going to be in it, both of them, because they've already been eliminated. The Red Wings had by far the worst record in the NHL. That proves that on the Red Wings end. And then the Pistons, 12th in the East. And only 9 Eastern Conference teams can play in that 22-team playoff format this year due to COVID-19. So the Pistons apparently did not even come close nonetheless, whether it be 8 teams making it to the East or 9. It could have been 11, but the Pistons might not have made it anyway. With that being said, let's go ahead and go to our TMSTP story vault, if we may. From Jeff Moss at the Detroit Sports Rag, of course. You can follow him on Twitter at HowAboutIt91 from September 8th of 2016, headlining, "This is what you call sportsmanship and humanity, ? Here it goes. Earlier this morning, Detroit News writer Tony Paul posted an article regarding former Red Wings forward Brendan Shanahan, my favorite Red Wing, by the way, former Red Wings forward Brendan Shanahan's induction into the Michigan Sports Hall of Fame, where the 3-time Stanley Cup champion will join such dignitaries as William Clay Ford Sr. in those hallowed halls. Well, hallowed halls is being kind, and since the MSHOF does not actually have a museum you can attend after it was evicted from an alcove at Cobo Hall a few years back. Who wouldn't want to take their child to a building where all the plaques were displayed so little Johnny or Jane could ask, quote, "Who was William Clay Ford Sr. and why is he here?" unquote. You think the birds and the bees discussion is a tough one to have. Try answering the question about William Clay Ford Sr. Is it already time for my annual rant bashing the MSHOF for inducting the worst owner in professional sports history while in the middle of the Matt Millen Holocaust? Actually, I'm going to skip it this year and just wonder if Bastion Boogers should accept a phone call from the WWE next year congratulating him on his induction to their Hall of Fame. Anyway, a couple of items from the Tony Paul piece, piqued my interest. First, Shanahan's continued insistence that he left Detroit just because he just thought it was time to move on. Here are his quotes. Quote, "I could feel it was coming. I'd always sort of felt I wanted to walk out the door rather than get pushed out the door or have a whole lot of people talking behind your back," unquote. And then quote number 2, "We had 2 respectful forwards in Henrik Zetterberg and Pavel Datsyuk that had become our best players, and I think the team just needed to be handed over to them. I probably could have stayed and become sort of that veteran guy that people said, in quote, he's still good, but he used to be better, out quote, unquote." The actual people talking behind Shanahan's back when he left town were the Yentas in Bloomfield Hills, mothers, babysitters, etc., who claimed the real reason Shanny left the Wings was due to the fact that he had a relationship with the team's anthem singer, Karen Newman, and Brendan's wife gave him an ultimatum that involved leaving Metro Detroit. Wait, Shanahan won an award for qualities off the ice and for being a humanitarian. The same Brendan Shanahan who pulled a Simon Cowell in St. Louis when he stole his line mate Craig Jennings' wife, ? Yep, Janney graciously offered to let Shanahan live with it, and Shanahan lived with him when the power forward was sent to the Blues in a convoluted free agency mess revolving around Scott Stevens. And in return for Janney's hospitality, Shanahan lifted his spouse. The same Mrs. Janney Shanahan who allegedly gave Brendan the Karen Newman leave Detroit ultimatum, if you are to believe the real housewives of Bloomfield Township. This got me thinking about other Detroit athletes. Ed Smith has joined us. We're going to pause right here. Ed Smith, how are we doing tonight? How was your week?
Doing well. The week has been a little bit different than most, but everything is still cool. How's everyone else doing?
Pretty good. So we were just in the middle of reading that one article from Jeff Moss. This is what you call sportsmanship and humanity. I'm going to pause right over here. Okay, I just left my mark. So, Ed, the Tigers, they came back from 4-0 down to win 5-4. Jonathan Scope with a big 2-night hot streak, got 5 RBIs at least, including a game-tying 2-run home run. He had a 2-run home run last night, and then Jacoby Jones, the game-winning solo shot in the 7th inning. Jimenez with another save. Matthew Boyd, still being Matthew Boyd, though, 4 earned runs on 5 innings pitched. But, yeah. But he got bailed out that time. He didn't suffer a loss like he did in Cincinnati last week on opening night.
True, but I think that may be due to the fact that for some reason, even though the Tigers' bats have had some problems in terms of making some damage or getting damage done to the starting pitchers, hence the reason why they lost at least one of those games against Cincinnati the way they did. But yet, for some reason, I don't know if it's because Cincinnati's bullpen happened to be bad last week, or that's a harbinger of what's to come for them, or the fact that, we may be seeing something similar with the Kansas City bullpen, or maybe it's just a referendum on how things are going to be given the current climate situation and circumstances that all teams are in right now. But still, that being said, I digress. It is a show of character that the offense still doesn't give up, still has that belief that, hey, there's still enough time in this game to turn things around. And when you know it happened again tonight, just like it happened against Cincinnati. Credit to the players, and I think that some credit should be given to the coaches for instilling that in the players, because we've seen for the past few years now, when have you ever seen consistently a team performing like this in late innings offensively? And even Frank mentioned something in the chat as well about how the 75% of outs have been turned out at the Tigers' defense so far has been double plays. When have you ever heard that? It's the third most in all baseball. When have you ever heard that being used to describe the Detroit defense? Usually it's the Tigers' bats that's the ones hitting into those double plays, especially with men on board or men in scoring position. So it's quite nice to see a little bit of a reversal of portion of that, at least. It was also nice to see Miguel Cabrera, I believe, move into sole possession of 30th place on the all-time home run list when he hit his career number 478 against Cincinnati. I don't know I couldn't quite tell, forgive me if I'm wrong, if he hit another one either tonight or recently against Kansas City, but still, it is nice to see that Miggy, especially now with his weight loss, can still hit the ball out of the park. I wish he would cut down a little bit on those strikeouts just a little bit more, but hey, you get what you can take. And I will say, so far, with the way that this AL Central division has been, people call it the Comedy Central, and I think for good reason, because in most years you have seen, even up until June or July, that even if the most terrible of teams, whether it was the Tigers or the Twins, not the Twins, or the White Sox, just the rotation that it usually goes in, other than seeing Cleveland or like we saw recently with Minnesota being the ones in strong contention to win the division, it'd be interesting to see with this new shortened, abbreviated season, knowing the teams that would usually be out of it by now is going to give everyone as close to a fair shot as possible. Now, you can take it for what you want, whether it be positive or negative, but the Tigers are using it to their advantage so far, and hey, good for them.
Yeah. Let me touch on Miguel Cabrera right now. He's still hitting .091. He went 0-4 tonight with only one strikeout.
Okay, at least he cut down on the strikeouts, but man, that's not the numbers you want to see. Now, I will grant you in saying that what we've always seen in years past, and Miggy has always, for some reason, had a slow start to the season, and he usually picks it up around after a month or two or so. But again, this is far different a circumstance and situation that Miggy has ever had to go through. So I don't know if his numbers are indicative of what's to come, or in terms of both a negative fashion or in a positive fashion. That's still remaining yet to be seen. We're barely 2 weeks into this season, and given how we're seeing many outbreaks supposedly with other teams around the league, who knows if there's going to be any remaining baseball the way this keeps up. At least, at the very least, I don't know, we've mentioned this or we're going to mention it, but I think Adam Silver, we constantly have been giving Adam Silver credit for what the NBA has done. But look at what they have done, though, given the circumstances and the situation that they found themselves in, knowing that not everybody was really fully on board with this bubble idea. But look, here we are now, at least for the past 2 weeks, there's not been a single positive test for COVID. And we're talking about a pool that has over 330 players, some of the best and most well-known and well-recognized names and athletes in the entire world. And they have, whether they would have wanted to or not, they have, at least credit to them, they have followed the protocols, they've followed the procedures. For the most part, yes, there have been some players sneaking out, but still, we haven't had any new reports or indications of more players getting sick or testing positive. So there has to be, on some level, an indication of what the NBA bubble is doing. I think between what Adam Silver has done and what Dana White and the UFC has done now for the past several months, should have been the standard bearers, the blueprint of what to follow in terms of opening or restarting your sports league, respectively. Baseball did not adhere to that. In fact, baseball has been one of the model examples of what not to do in a situation like this. From the negotiations between the owners and the Player Association, knowing what the looming CBA has, it was just an ugly mess all around. And now, when you add in the new news about what's regarding both the Marlins and the Phillies, yikes! That's all you got to say about what kind of job MLB has done in handling this. It is not good and not pretty at all.
No, not pretty at all. But speaking of the Tigers, they are tied with the Cleveland Indians for second place in the AL Comedy Central. 4-2, though. The Tigers are 4-2. The Twins are 3-1 in first place.
I don't know if it was the additions they've made in the offseason, adjustments made by the coaches, or a little bit of both. But, they've been hitting and raking home runs. I think they already reached a certain plateau in terms of they're hitting their 8th home run. They far surpassed that in terms of what they did at a certain point at all last season. So again, good for them and credit to them. But man, it is quite something when you see a team coming off of consecutive seasons where they're at or near 100 friggin' losses, and now 2 weeks into the season they're near the top of the division. So that's something like that takes your eyes some adjustment to get to.
Well, Ed, I do want to make mention to you that they are currently at 11 home runs through 6 games. They were at 10 for 5 games last night, and I believe through at this
11
last year they only had 1 home run through the first 5 games.
Mm-hmm. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, some of their new adjustments their new signees have been making some adjustments or been part of the reason why there's been a bit of a touch of an offensive explosion. I think that experience does come to play, no matter what spot of the lineup you're in. And I think you got to give some credit to Ron Gardenhire. He hasn't overstepped his boundaries. He understands what's working right now. The offense is clicking, so he hasn't touched it. So in terms of making adjustments for what he needs to do with his starting pitching, I can't tell you that. I was the one in favor of keeping Casey Mize up here, but at the very least he gets more experience. But I don't know. I don't know if Mize was going to have more so of a Matthew Boyd-like performance or what, or quite the opposite. But at least it would have been experience nonetheless. But still, I think Coach, Ron Gardenhire, as much as we belittle and demean the type of job he's done so far, I think he at least deserves some type of credit for what the team has done so far. But while players do play ultimately, it is the coach's responsibility, or in this case the manager's responsibility, to make sure your guys are in the best position possible to make said plays. The offense has done that. The bullpen or the relief pitching has done a good job making sure that whatever damage was done to the starting pitching did not get too much out of hand. And all around, it's what you call the team found each other.
Yeah, believe it or not, the offense has come through, especially Jonathan Scope, like I mentioned before. 5 RBIs in 2 nights. That's last night and tonight. against those Kansas City Royals. The Kansas City Royals are tied for fourth place with the Chicago White Sox at 2-4. But still, that season's young, but it's only going to be a 60-game season, so not as young as you think.
Exactly. It's going to be a mad dash from, literally it was a mad dash from the word go when the season, quote-unquote, officially started.
Definitely. So we went over these other headlines. The Pistons buying the Phoenix Suns G League, the Northern Arizona Suns, and then the Michigan State Spartans football team in isolation for being in isolation for 14 days, and then 16 athletes and 4 staff members total testing positive. So that's 20 people involved in that program. And then the Michigan Wolverines pausing field hockey, ice hockey, swimming, diving, and volleyball, but not football because that's not affected. And then finally the Lions installing plexiglass dividers into their locker room as part of their new safety precautions, as well as their defensive tackle John Atkins opting out, and Kenny Galladay and T.J. Hawkinson being put on the reserve COVID-19 list. So that's
nothing about staffing, correct?
Nothing about Stafford, no.
Okay, but still,
except quarterbacks. All quarterbacks in the NFL, including him, are likely to be quarantined in isolation just to avoid the COVID-19 spread. That's it.
For precautionary reasons. It's not necessarily a given that they have
exactly
contracted. Okay. Just making sure, because I have a family member that was a little bit confused because she heard Stafford's name and made one assumption after another. So for those that may have a little confusion, does this mean Stafford? No. It's clarification. Stafford does not, at this time, he is not positive. He's not tested positive. He does not have COVID. This is just done for precautionaries because we know how the NFL likes to protect their quarterbacks. So I get it, but still, it is interesting to see 2 potential big offensive weapons in Hopkinson and Galladay on that list. But still, we just hope at the very least, above all else, that their health remains the biggest priority.
Absolutely, health is always the biggest priority in sports, especially with that COVID-19 pandemic going on.
And I was just wondering, when you mentioned that blurb about MSU, that's not a small number or a number to easily snoot at in terms of potential contamination and spread of the virus between all those people. Because one person could still potentially spread it amongst 40 people, depending on who they come into contact with. So in regards to what MSU has to do, you have to wonder, if this is going to happen to the Spartans, who's to say it can't happen to, say, Ohio State or Iowa or Nebraska or even Michigan for that matter? Just because East Lansing isn't necessarily a hop, skip, and a jump away from Ann Arbor doesn't necessarily mean you can't catch it still. Because, like we said, like we mentioned East Lansing, the proximity that is to the capital, oh boy, oh my. So I'm really curious to see how the rest of the Big Ten is going to respond or make adjustments to this one, because we've seen how baseball fumbled the bag. We haven't really seen a proper protocol or bubble plan, quote unquote, being levied by either the NFL or NCAA amongst, or at least when it concerns football, compared to what we've seen, what the NBA has done, and necessarily to a certain extent what the UFC did with Fight Island, or holding events at the Apex Center the way they did. Constant testing, constant isolation, making sure all of the talent that is scheduled to perform is up to date in terms of testing, distancing, and whatever. But we haven't seen any type of plan, to my knowledge, recollection, being levied. Either was Mark Emmert, because football season is literally on the doorstep. And I haven't seen Commissioner Goodell really issue or detail the type of plan the way Commissioner Silver has stepped up to the plate and has done it. So it's quite interesting to see, how the NFL is going to perform, obviously. But it's going to be really interesting to see how the college ranks are going to perform, especially when there's this debate going on about whether or not we should even send our kids back to school. And not just talking about at the elementary or middle school level. We're talking up to college, because there are still students still have to go to school to get their degrees, whether you're an athlete or not. Your degree is still your degree. So in terms of
regards of having a remote learning or virtual learning and still having the time to get out on the practice field and do what you need to do without, and do it as safe as possible, it's quite a conundrum.
Yeah. So with all that being discussed and all that being run through, by the way, the NHL has had 0 positive tests as well.
Good on them. Hope they keep that up as long as possible.
Yeah, true. So we're going to start over on the TMSTP Story Vault. This is what you call sportsmanship and humanity. Earlier this morning, Detroit News writer Tony Paul posted an article regarding former Red Wings forward Brendan Shanahan's induction into the Michigan Sports Hall of Fame, where the 3-time Stanley Cup champion will join such dignities as William Clay Ford Sr. in those hallowed halls. Well, hallowed halls is being kind since the MSHOF doesn't actually have a museum you can attend after it was evicted from an alcove at Cobo Hall a few years back. Who wouldn't want to take their child to a building where all the plaques were displayed so little Johnny or Jane could ask, quote, who is William Clay Ford Sr. and why is he here, unquote? You think the birds and the bees discussion is a tough one to have? Try answering the question about William Clay Ford Sr. Is it already time for my annual rant bashing the Michigan Sports Hall of Fame, the Michigan Sports Hall of Fame for inducting the worst owner in professional sports history while in the middle of the Matt Millen Holocaust? This is from Jeff Moss of the Detroit Sports Rag on September 8, 2016, of course. By the way, actually I'm going to skip it this year and just wonder if Bastion Booger should accept a phone call from the WWE next year congratulating him on his induction to their Hall of Fame. Anyway, a couple of items from the Tony Paul piece piqued my interest. First, Shanahan's continued insistence that he left Detroit for the New York Rangers particularly, may I add, because he just thought it was time to move on. Here are his quotes. Quote, number one, I could feel it was coming. I'd always sort of felt I wanted to walk out the door rather than get pushed out the door or have a whole lot of people talking behind your back, unquote. Quote number two, we had 2 respectful forwards in Henrik Zetterberg and Pavel Datsyuk that have become our best players, and I think the team just needed to be handed over to them. I probably could have stayed and become sort of that veteran guy that people said, in quote, he's still good, but he used to be better, out quote, unquote. The actual people talking it behind Shanahan's back when he left town were the Yentas and Bloomfield Hills, mothers, babysitters, etc., who claimed the real reason Shanny left the Wings was due to the fact that he had a relationship with the team's anthem singer, Karen Newman, and Brendan's wife gave him an ultimatum that involved leaving Metro Detroit. Wait, Shanahan won an award for qualities off the ice for being a humanitarian. Uh-oh. The same Brendan Shanahan won an award for qualities off the ice, and for the same Brendan Shanahan who pulled a Simon Cowell in St. Louis when he stole his line mate Craig Janney's wife. Yep, Janney graciously offered to let Shanahan live with him when the power forward was sent to the Blues in a convoluted free agency mess revolving around Scott Stevens, a former New Jersey Devil, may I add. And in return for Janney's hospitality, Shanahan lifted his spouse. Yikes. The same Mrs. Janney Shanahan who allegedly gave Brendan the Karen Newman leave Detroit ultimatum, if you are to believe the Real Housewives of Bloomfield Township. This got me thinking about other Detroit athletes who've been honored for their humanity and sportsmanship. The NBA trophy, which is given to the player who exemplifies the ideals of sportsmanship on the court with ethical behavior, fair play, and integrity, is literally named after Joe Dumars. Yes, the Joe Dumars trophy is handed out to someone who exemplifies ethics and integrity. Amazingly, the league decided not to rename the award after Dumars was caught in an NBA-led sting operation to discover who was leaking secret league memos to Yahoo Basketball writer Adrian Wojnarowski. Yep, Mr. Ethics and Integrity was providing Wojnarowski secret information in exchange for positive coverage for the most influential NBA scribe in America. It said, quote, in 2010, the NBA fined Dumars for $500,000 for leaking multiple confidential league memos to Wojnarowski, according to multiple sources. This matches the third largest publicly known fine the league has ever handed down. The NBA has decided that too many memos were making it into the media, so they conducted a sting operation over several months. They would change a few words or numbers in different teams' copies of otherwise identical memos so that when the memos leaked, they could spot the small differences and trace them back to the leaker. This approach caught Dumars red-handed, as well as an executive from another team who was fined $12,500 for leaking to a draft-focused website. Joe Dumars, the Detroit Pistons, and the NBA all declined to comment on that fine, unquote. But that's not all the questionable citizenship honors in Detroit over the recent past. In 2009, Lions center Dominic Raiola was presented with the Good Guy Award by the Detroit Sports Broadcasters Association and Detroit chapter PFWA. Dominic Raiola, good guy? Have those words ever been used in the same paragraph before? And while this honor came before Raiola harassed members of the University of Wisconsin marching band, it was after he gave the middle finger to Lions fans at Ford Field. Of course, we remember that. I'm guessing we are just weeks away from Tyler Collins receiving this award as well, him flipping off Tiger fans 4 years ago as well. And speaking of the Tigers, just the other day, their nominee for the Roberto Clemente Award for the player who best exemplifies the game of baseball sportsmanship, community involvement, and the individual's contribution to his team was announced. Now for the youngsters who might not remember, Clemente was a Pittsburgh Pirates Hall of Famer who died in a plane crash while delivering food and supplies to victims of a devastating earthquake in Nicaragua back in 1972. So who is this year's Tigers nominee? Miguel Cabrera. Now, I hope that Miggy has his life in order, but should a man be in the running for this honor when he has a resume that includes the following incidents? Number one, he got drunk with the Chicago White Sox during the last week of a pennant chase. Number two, he was involved in a domestic violence issue with his wife. Number three, once called a young kid overweight and told him that he needed to work out. Number four, he threatened to blow up a restaurant and murder patrons. Ouch. Number five, he blew up a 0.26 while getting arrested for a DUI. And finally, number six, he behaved so unprofessionally with the media during the 2014 season that Detroit News baseball writer Tom Gage felt compelled to write about it. The same Tom Gage whom the Tigers honored the following season upon his retirement. Not exactly a hatchet man. Look, I'm not saying that Cabrera couldn't have completely turned his life around, but that doesn't rap sheet disqualify you from ever being considered for an award named after a man who died while assisting victims of a natural disaster. I think so. I mean, if these are gentlemen who are being honored for their good deeds, what are the rest of our heroes up to? Such as Sergei Fedorov, for example. That's the end of this article. So, first off, Brendan Shanahan trying to get away with getting in trouble with Karen Newman and Shanahan's wife and Craig Janney's wife and such. Shanahan must have been a ladies' man back then before leaving for New York, the Rangers. And then we got Joe Dumars, and then Dominic Raiola, Tyler Collins, and then Miguel Cabrera with a list of his incidents. But they wanted to honor him in the Michigan Sports Hall of Fame anyway. So, Ed, we'll go to you, and then we'll go to Frank as well. So we'll give you guys 2 minutes each. Ed, take the floor.
So much to unravel in just those 2 minutes alone. Whether or not the speculation regarding Shanahan's personal adventures or skirmishes off the
I'll
ice
give you 3 minutes.
Are true or not, thanks. Whether or not those allegations were true or not, it does speak to how, back then, or even somewhat now, players, if you achieve a little bit notoriety and you achieve some level of success with contributions, certain things can be and could be overlooked, whether or not it was fair or right or not. The Karen Newman thing, I've heard murmurs of that before. It wouldn't surprise me if it was true. I mean, it's not the first time a prominent player might have been involved in an extramarital affair with a known person that might have been closely associated with team organization. We've seen inner workplace affairs happen all the time. So who's to say that hockey can be exempt? As the other examples that were mentioned, the Tyler Collins thing, we ripped him a new one over that. Dom Riola, don't get me started on Dom, even because for a guy that was supposed to be all such big talk, he was such an underperformer, both in terms of backing up his talk and what he did on the field as well. Enough of Dom Riola, please. And Miguel Cabrera, boy, oh boy, that's another one. It's long documented, his rap, say the least. I remember making an offhanded joke, like, this is when I was like real young, but I remember watching him perform in that game 163 against Minnesota when he hit that home run. I offhandedly made a remark about how he treated that ball the way he treated his wife. So that lets you know what was well known. Exactly. Hey, I was a 14-year-old kid, 16-year-old kid back then, but and making that joke in my own privacy with my family. But still, that lets you know how probably well known some of Cabrera's transgressions were. Now, if he has made adjustments to turn his life around from those dark points, like I remember the DUI video when he's in the back seat of a police car, and so disoriented, his mugshot, all those bad moments have been horrible. If Cabrera has cleaned up on those incidents, given his reputation with other players amongst the league, good on him. I hope he keeps his path as straight and narrow as possible. But, I think it just speaks to a broader picture of how sometimes we cannot and should not always deify certain individuals on any platform, whether it be sports, politics, entertainment, etc. Because guess what? They can be human just like you and me, and they can make mistakes, sometimes horrible, stupid mistakes, just like you and me as well.
Yeah, true that. Wow. Just awfulness from Miguel Cabrera all along. Frank, I'll give you 1 minute, and then we'll go to the closing statement. Frank, go ahead.
Well, I think when I first read this article, that was the first I heard about Brendan Shanahan messing around with Karen Newman, and heck, I didn't even know that he had stolen another NHL player's wife way back then. I mean, yeah, it's kind of messed up, but I'm not going to spend too much time beating that dead horse. Dominic Raiola getting a Good Guy Award, yeah, that's a joke itself, and I would hope Tyler Collins did not win such an award. I think Moss was just making a joke about that, because if so,
right,
then I would probably have lost my crap completely, because I do not like Tyler Collins one bit. I thought he was not only a terrible baseball player, but just an absolute AH of a person as well. And Joe Dumar's award, yeah, I think that needs to be changed, but that it is what it is, so I won't spend too much time harping on that, as we are running short on time, and we do have to get to our closing statement, except for the fact that Miguel Cabrera, rap sheet, yeah, that's a no for me, getting the Roberto Clemente Award. I do hope he has cleaned his life up and turned it around, but you can't have that kind of a past. And that's kind of like Ed said, don't deify these athletes. They're still human, just like we all are.
Yes, absolutely. So it's time for the closing statement. I'll give you 1 minute each, guys. Ed, we'll start with you again. 1 minute closing statement. The floor is yours.
While it's not so easy to predict or correlate when and where how this whole issue of this disease is going to spread or explode, the best precautionary measures still need to be taken. And I do not think, in terms of what baseball has done and what we've seen so far from football, or could see from football, that has not been the case. It's unfortunate the way that all these leagues seem to be so preoccupied of wanting to restart up as quickly as possible, but yet still not taking the proper guides, precautionary measures to set up things, set up protocol, to set up the right measures the way it should be done, the way it has to be done, the way it needs to be done. So while Adam Silver and Dana White may deserve as much credit as possible, Rob Manfred and the Roger Goodells of the world need to be taken to task and held accountable to what's been happening so far and what potentially could happen in the future.
Frank, 1 minute, closing statement, go.
I had seen a lot of reports that said, these bubbles aren't going to work for the NBA or the NHL because players are probably still going to go out or things will still happen, blah, blah, blah. Well, guess what? both leagues completed their testing of COVID, and they've done it repeatedly. And how many tests have come back positive since players have entered their respective bubbles in Orlando, or in hockey's case, Toronto or Edmonton? A big, fat 0.
Bagel.
So I'll say it again. Tip your cap to Adam Silver and to Gary Bettman for getting it right the first time. And let's hope that it stays that way as the postseasons are set to resume this weekend, actually. So let's enjoy some postseason basketball and hockey on our TVs.
Yeah, as well as baseball as well, which leads to my closing statement. Major League Baseball is still getting their season going because other teams don't have outbreaks except for the Miami Marlins, which hopefully that gets fixed. So that's my closing statement. Gentlemen, excellent job as always. And if there's any local, state, or national business that is interested in sponsoring the Michigan Sports Truth podcast on Stables.network, please contact the network executive producer, Mark Mancini, by email at mancinisports@yahoo.com. We'll be back next week for Ed Smith and Frank Vasner. This is Taylor Phillips signing off. Thanks very much for listening, downloading, and sharing. And remember, the truth is out there. TTFN, ta-ta for now. Bon appetit. Hit them with a hind. We rest our case. Stay safe.
Advancements in the medical field are giving nurses faster, more effective results than ever before. They should expect the same from their education, too. Capella University's game-changing FlexPath format allows you to set your own deadlines and leverage your experience to move faster through your program. So the faster you move, the more money you save. When you're ready, we'll be here. Visit capella.edu for a trial course at no cost to you. Capella University. Don't just learn smarter.
It just doesn't feel like summer without an ice-cold Coca-Cola in your hand. Stop by your local convenience store today and grab a 20-ounce bottle of Coca-Cola or Coca-Cola Zero Sugar. Or pick up even more delicious refreshment with a 20-ounce bottle of Diet Coke, Sprite, or Fanta. So no matter how you soak in that summer sun, at home or on the go, grab an ice-cold Coca-Cola today and enjoy.